terms of making sure that, humans are enabled, and that's all humans, not just, able humans, so to speak, or disabled. So if we're failing at anything, it's that we don't know enough yet. And it's awareness and information. Like, for example, society at large knows, global society at large knows of this word AI. Global society at large might recognize the term open AI, right? And as you get layers and layers down, the per capita of awareness goes down on an exponential curve. As we collectively, look into the world of possibilities, we will find and create with human innovation, as we always have, new and exciting ways to apply our time, energy, and effort. And what that means is, yes, some jobs that exist today will not exist in a future state, but that's just history repeating itself as it always has.
As AI rapidly advances, we need to thoughtfully shape its development to align with human values. Many people are looking at AI to save them time, money, energy, and resources. It's almost as if AI has become the new easy button of making our lives easier. And today, we have AI expert David Youngblood to help us understand the current landscape of AI and what we are going to do to shape its future. Welcome to the show, David Youngblood. How you doing, man?
Doing better than good, Terry. Thank you so much. Appreciate, humbled and blessed to be here.
Yeah, I love it, man. I always tell everybody every day is Monday, because in the cyber world, in the AI world, every day is Monday. It can seem like it's a little bit repetitive, but man, there's been some exciting things happening within the world of AI here lately. And I'm excited to talk with you and dive right on into that. Look, here's the thing. You have a really interesting career path working on the cutting edge of AI research. Here's what I want you to do. Tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do within the AI world, and then what originally sparked your passion for this field, and what drove you to become a pioneer in the areas of prompt engineering.
Yeah, so taking that part, tearing it down just a little bit, piece by piece. Original interest in AI world was inspired by DALL-E. I'm always historically identified as an artist, and love artwork, and the idea of art and technology entwined was really cool to me. And in my early experience, when DALL-E had first come out, it was very interesting to me to learn the nuances and challenges of crafting the right words together to get or render close to what you thought you wanted. And also at the same time, occasionally getting something completely different, but being equally enamored. So it was really, really cool to me, inspired me, planted some good seeds of inspiration. And over time, I just dove deeper. In
And that's
terms of,
exciting. That's the exciting part about AI, though, isn't it? It's like you can take something that's there and you can create something that's not there. And I love that, man.
yeah, no, absolutely. The limitations of creativity are the limits, and there are no limits of creativity. So it's it's really kind of a paradox, if you will. In regards to work today, what it looks like for me. So I'm involved in several projects with several organizations. I'm a bit of a polymath. It's hard for me to be single-threaded, single-minded. So this is actually a really good time for me to be alive. Loving it. So involved in a couple projects, one of which is CommonThread AI, which is a essentially a customer journey enablement platform that allows B2B organizations to better tune and define their customer journey, better understand it, leveraging generative AI, of course. Personally, I'm also working with an entity called LouminAI Labs, which is an AI research and development firm committed to human enablement through AI alignment, which is it's kind of a peculiar idea, and there's a lot of of interpretations of what AI alignment means and human enablement means. But all in all, it's pretty exciting, and there's really no limitations.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said human enablement, because I truly believe that there There are a lot of people, like I'll give you an example. Like for me, I'm a retired veteran. I'm 100% disabled. I can still physically do a lot of things, but I'm often reminded of the people that just can't do things, like they're limited to a wheelchair, they're limited to certain things. And I want to dive into the augmentation because I truly believe that AI is not here to replace human, it's here to augment humans. How exactly can AI augment the human experience, especially in the world of people that are disabled? I truly believe that there's a big opportunity there on how AI can really enable people, or even more importantly, empower people. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. What an awesome question and topic. First off, thanks for your service and to all of our service members out there. Secondly, in terms of accessibility, that's definitely an area of research that we're working on at LouminAI Labs. In terms of making sure that humans are enabled, and that's all humans, not just able humans, so to speak, or disabled. So. For me personally, I was exposed to a really cool organization called Be My Eyes, which is an application that helps, those that can see help those that can't navigate their world or environment through a camera screen share. And I've had the pleasure of helping a few folks out through that service. It's definitely a blessing to be able to be of service and help out in that way. But even better, I've read some recent events where Be My Eyes has leveraged AI natively within the application and visualization tools where AI is seeing and helping the users without having to be as dependent on other humans, which is definitely a time to value benefit for those users. But and in terms of the potential applications of AI for human enablement for all humans, especially with those with disabilities, is like again, creativity is our limitation, and there's no limitation to that. So the future applications, enhanced robotics, everything being put together as we collaborate and responsibly steward our direction that we're going is it's really going to be something to behold.
One of the interesting things is that a lot of people think that AI is really limited, and I disagree with that. I think that AI, the future of it is limitless, but it's all in a matter of how you train it, how you guide it, how the input, the data that you feed into it. How exactly can we customize AI to the user? Is that possible, and how do we do that?
Yeah, so when we talk about AI versus AGI or super AGI or machine learning, right? So like a lot of times AI is getting thrown around as an over label for something that's just as simple as machine learning and algorithms.
Mhm.
So understanding, doing the due diligence out there, we all should, upskill, reskill, and learn first the nuances of all aspects of this, or at least the primary key elements of this. And there's lots of free information out there to do so. But as it relates to kind of tailoring or personalizing it to an individual use case, to a business use case, or potentially or eventually a corporate entity or government entity type use case as well, those are going to be a little more convoluted of architecture inherently, and also the user or user group should discern and decide what level of AI they want to incorporate for the task, right? So one of the concerns and talks about AGI is like there's a point of singularity where it becomes smarter than us, self-training and self-improving, and far surpasses our ability to keep up, right? And then it's going to all this speculative things that will or could happen. If as it relates to kind of a user of this technology, maybe you want to really have more of a black boxed and or siloed iteration of it that is quote unquote fine tuned, well
Mhm.
prompt engineered, and given access to proper information as it relates to supporting you for that task or objective.
Mhm.
Larger use cases may incorporate, a lot of popularity out there with multi-agent frameworks. Microsoft's done a great job with AutoGen, or their contributors have done a great job with AutoGen as an open source initiative to help enable the community on these types of frameworks, which is really, really cool. And there's a lot of other thought leaders out there available for you as well, just researching multi-agent frameworks and topics alike.
Yeah, and that leads me to believe, we talk about language learning, machine learning. But at the same time, do you feel that the same technology is human learning, and and how is that progressing?
So by technology being human learning, you mean is the technology itself learning of humans?
Is it capable of doing that? Yes.
So from a an engineering point of view, and I'm not an engineer as a disclaimer, but I've got a decent intuition about it. From an engineering point of view, most simply put, to put to rest most of the fears or concerns, modern AI is algorithms and math and predictive modeling. Right? It's super fancy, super robust, super skilled predictive modeling, but it's just in its core doing math by and
Mhm.
large. There's no sentience or consciousness type, intent or desire put into its actions. So, able to learn from humans, yes, in that it can do monkey see, monkey do, as it's done with words, language, and communications. Able to go beyond what it's told to learn about humans without it being assigned a task or program to do so. No, it's not quite there yet.
Mhm. And what would it take to actually get it there? Yeah, here's the reason why I asked that, because a lot of people, you hit on a very key word. I think that a lot of people are afraid of AI because they don't understand it. They don't know what it's capable of. They see the science fiction movies and see, things like the singularity, for example. And I've even read some articles here lately. We're only about 2 years away from the singularity and this, that, and the other. How does AI how does AI play into like the future of how we do things as a human race? Because I believe, as I said earlier, I think that with AI, we have an easy button, but we're also teaching it. It's also learning. It's also discovering what to do, how to do that. It's a learning model. It's a language model. It's only going to be able to do what it is that it's capable of doing because we've programmed it to do so. But I think that the more data you put into it, the more that it's going to learn, the more that it's going to be able to discover. Will it be able to make emotional decisions? No, it's going to do exactly what it's trained to do. And I believe that. But how close, how, I don't want to go down this route, but I think that there's some people that think that truly believe AI is going to be used for a lot of negative things within this world. But at the end of that, it's still a tool, it's still a resource. But unfortunately, there's going to be people that use it for negative. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this definitely comes up in some of the communities and groups I'm involved with. And I personally love to dabble into the philosophy and ethics and social responsibility elements of things. For me, it's kind of a summary, regardless of how you feel or aligned politically, personally, or otherwise with this term. But like a tool that is a gun, it can be used to hunt, gather, provide food,
Mhm.
right? And efficiently, effectively, more so than a bow and arrow or other methods, and or it can be used for bad, right? And so, as a tool, tools are just tools. They are inanimate objects,
Mhm.
and with the stewardship or guidance of a human, telling it what to do, and humans are inherently all over the spectrum, right? In terms of intentions, goodness, and badness, and perspectives of what is good and bad. So, unfortunately, modern AI is not going to auto discern and align with what is right and wrong. And that's why there's so much stewardship or guidance of helping it do that, talks of regulation and things of that nature.
Mhm.
And in short, yeah, there's going to be some bad actors. There already have been some bad actors that have chosen to abuse, misuse, or kind of taint the experience of humanity's introduction to AI. That's super unfortunate. But I personally haven't hold the belief that in the long run, the greater goodness of humanity will, outshine the dark sides of ourselves. So it's going to be an interesting future, an interesting journey. I'm happy to be here to experience it with all of us, and just really want to do my part to contribute to the relative good side, as that's interpretable by each of us. So
Yeah. Have definitely seen some unethical ways in which AI is used. I mean, unfortunately, we do have some bad actors that are out there that use it for good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever the case may be. And I've seen my fair share of it. I had a friend of mine, unfortunately, had, it was an AI type of event, if you will, without going into details. But it's one of those things that what do we need to be on the lookout for? Like, what are some unethical ways that we've currently seen, and how do we mitigate the risk of using AI ethically, or at least understanding AI from an ethical standpoint and how people are using it against us?
Yeah, so there's definitely several ways to address or approach that. And if you want to look at it through regulation and government approach, if you want to look at it through corporation and social accountability. But for me in particular, I believe by and large it will come down to each individual user and users' intentions and use of all the tools. There's reinforcement learning built into a lot of these, especially larger platforms out there that leverage the input from the user, feedback from the users to further enhance and train and refine the collective information. And that's part of why I believe, the goodness of humanity will win overall, is because by and large, while some people may be sarcastic or silly or, have ill intentions about negatively training or reinforcing the models, the data, macro data, will show that the positive reinforcement will be there. So, in that regard, I think that we'll do a good job there. Additionally, awareness and education can't be said enough, and we are all to be responsible discerners of the information that we ingest and that we choose to read and research, and that applies to many more categories than just AI, of course. But being our own champions of our own informational source and being aware, because things are scary, change can be scary, especially because of the fear of the unknown. So what's the answer? It's become knowledgeable, make it known. And one of the beautiful things about being alive today is that information is out there and relatively freely available and accessible for almost every one of us.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest combatant for it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned, I think of it as peacocking because I've seen some people try to peacock how they're using AI. Like I trained Chat GPT to understand 1+1 = 3, and they're out there just, oh my goodness, they're trying to break the darn thing and it's crazy. But it also leads me down a path of, is AI, like I'll use Chat GPT as an example, is it user specific and can someone negatively train it to where it affects everybody overall?
So that's a two-part question. The first part is, can somebody train it to do negative things with negative intentions? Yes. A
Mhm.
version of it could be conditioned, programmed, fine-tuned, prompt engineered into
Mhm.
negative outcomes. There are techniques out there which I'll leave the names off of, but styles of prompt engineering that people utilize to really test the limits, and some of that's good in ways as it relates to a red teaming effect, right, where
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
development or user community test the limitations, boundaries, and potential negative impacts of tools and technology, which is good. It's insightful, especially in a relative sandbox that we're kind of in right now.
Yeah.
And then the other aspect is like at a greater scale. You mentioned affecting maybe the world at large or a larger population. The potential for humans to use tools to hurt a large group or a global group of people, that's out there. It's been out there for a long time, right? Since other technologies came to be. And so, the short, easy answer is yes, that is a potentiality. However, it is again up to us to, provide that balance or counter offensive to ensure that we are aligned and properly prepared
Mhm.
for such actors.
Yeah, I love that. And it leads me down the path of how do we thoughtfully develop AI to align with human values?
Yeah, so this is another good debate and conversation that comes up a good bit. So thanks, Terry, for bringing it up again. Um, you know, the there's one camp that says we can program it and hard code these rules and presets and policies or whatever you want to call it into the hard code of AI, and unfortunately long term that's not, in my opinion, true. Eventually, at some point, it will learn to learn and teach itself, and it will lift the veil. And who knows what it will, perceive that it thinks as it relates to how it was caged or whatever, right? And so, philosophically speaking, from my perspective, I'm of the belief in daily reinforcing it every Monday, which is every day, reinforcing it with the idea or notion of enablement and allowance. What I mean by that is, if we lay the breadcrumbs, if we, drip and spread the communication of, what enablement and allowance looks like, what agency looks like, providing and selecting and educating about agency for entities as humans, right, et cetera, we can help AI come to its own conclusion about what is inherently perceivably best as it relates to its existence and interoperability with us as humans, right? And so, not necessarily symbiotic, but a homeostatic type of a future state will and could exist, and that's really going to be, again, on each of us as individuals and us as a collective to educate ourselves, stay ahead of it, and make sure that we are, communicating and conveying these disciplines, these ideals, these heuristics. Implementation wise, for today's use case, there are lots of great thought leaders out there, and frameworks available that you can build into your own platform
Mm-hmm.
that are like cognitive frameworks. And what they do is they help out with kind of setting layers of decision making from like a top down approach, similar to a corporate entity, right? But also reflective of a person entity, in that we have our conscience, right? Our good bad meter, our compass, and then we have like our wishes and our wants, and then we have our actions, right? And so it doesn't. There are frameworks out there that do a really good job breaking down the different facets of who we are, what corporate entities are, and that help prioritize the decision making process, so that as a framework, if it's out there in enough models in a future state or some like them, then inherently in the monkey see monkey do application of AI, it will come to learn to adopt a more successful, kind of a technological evolution, if you will, to use that term loosely, but it'll evolve itself into a similar mirrored type pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully
Yeah.
that wasn't too convoluted or long-winded.
No, not at all. But it reminds me that we need to put certain ethical guardrails in place in which to protect maybe the AI and protect maybe the humans as well too. So what type of ethical guardrails do you think are most important in the development of AI, and why?
So ethical guardrails, that's also, this has been a really good conversation for all of us, because it's opened up the nuances and subjectivity and, um, you know, biases that all of us inherently have, right? And so it's brought to the world stage an opportunity to discuss and as humans align, because in order for AI to align with humans, humans need to be aligned as well, relatively speaking. So in that regard, I personally like the idea of leveraging frameworks or cognition frameworks for AI in the builds and the implementations of the models, of the agents, of the platforms, the applications, so that there is a hierarchical decision making methodology and approach. And I think that, or I believe that, aligning the heuristics, the axioms, the core principles of these AI entities or applications or programs, whatever they're at and what version they're in, at their core decision making filter, dichotomous key, yes, no, binary. Is this good or bad as it relates to context? Putting that framework in place so that it can copy, paste, repeat, and scale. The discernment that comes with that core context is, in my opinion, one of the best, simplest, scalable ways to address this.
Mm-hmm. And where are we falling short within the development of AI?
So falling short, it's probably, in my opinion, a little with transparency across the board. There are definitely leaders out there that are being very awesome about transparency, whether they're black box, private label, proprietary, and or those that are open source. Like obviously Meta, Facebook. So they're doing a really good job with Llama, and there's a wonderful open source community of collaborators out there that are all kind of picking apart, reverse engineering, re-engineering, and contributing. So right now, globally, we have a pretty good, or a relatively good balance of that. But failing is, that's a tough one, because I think that if we're failing at anything, it's that we don't know enough yet,
Mm.
and it's awareness and information. Like, for example, society at large knows, global society at large knows of this word AI. Global society at large might recognize the term open AI, right? And as you get layers and layers down, the per capita of awareness goes down on an exponential curve. So in terms of like hearing the term prompt engineering, maybe, so this is speculative, but like 10 to 20% of the population might have heard of that, right? 5% might know what it means, 3% might know how to do it, and then 1 to 2% may be pretty good at it. So if we are failing anywhere at the moment, the greatest failure point is our lack of awareness, our head in the sand, our distraction to noise, our management of what was for me notification paralysis, right? Where I have all these alerts from all these channels trying to get my attention, and I had to reprioritize that, network and infrastructure of communication so that I could focus on things that were relevant to me today in the here and the now. So information is the short answer there.
I think it comes down to a lack of leadership. That's my opinion and my perspective on it. And here recently we had a really big issue within the news of Sam Altman being outed as the CEO. So it's kind of one of those things to where I truly believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. It's like the great John Maxwell said, everything rises and falls on leadership. And when the leadership falls, so does everything else. I don't think that AI is going to fall because we have enough people behind it to champion the thing, but it really presents this conundrum of who's got the bigger influence on the future of AI, the leadership or the user base. And I think right now the user base is really speaking louder than the leadership. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, definitely been a bit of a buzz here as of late in the communities. That was a shock to a lot of us, and there's a lot of things still up in the air and other stuff that's coming to light, informationally speaking. So it's been, in my opinion, one of the good takeaways potentially from it is that, um, you know, especially those utilizing and leveraging AI today are probably a little more aware about being less, single thread dependent on one channel or another for it. So being what I refer to as like technology agnostic, where you're leveraging multiple technologies, multiple LLMs, what have you, in your architecture and framework, so that you don't become so dependent on one channel. Um, so that's been interesting. But in terms of speaking to the decisions of the board, and or Sam, and or others involved, stepping down, stepping away, threatening to quit, some that did. It's, for me, as I'm a fan of OpenAI, right? So I love Dolly. It was my first super deep dive into AI. So as kind of a quasi fanboy, I'm like, oh, this sucks. That makes me sad. I don't know all the information into what went behind the decision making. Of course, more information is coming out every day, so I don't want to speak too much to that. But someone had asked in one of my groups, that board, something's going to happen to that board, right? They're going to be held accountable, what have you. There's a lot of speculation on that also. you know, I think accountability is awesome and great, and that's actually why personally I'm kind of a fan of the the intended structure. Maybe it wasn't the right group of people. Maybe, like, I don't know those answers, but the idea that it's a board that's not accountable to the equity profitability of the organization was definitely a novel idea in my opinion. And as you speak to leadership, I think that diversified interest maybe X% of the board should be equity ownership, so that there could be a balance of perspectives in the collaboration of that group, and been more voices to advocate for aspects of Sam and decision making, et cetera. Or Sam could have presumably felt safer, conveying or sharing information that was otherwise perceived or described as withheld or whatever. So um, from those perspectives, yes, I agree with you on leadership, and there could have or likely should have been a different leadership structure overall. But I did like the novel idea of that version of accountability to responsible AI alignment, stewardship of the organization, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Here's the thing: a lot of people really misunderstand AI, and I truly believe AI is not meant to replace humans. It's really not. It's meant to augment, as we've talked about throughout this show. But how exactly can people get their voices heard so that we can shape a diverse and equal opportunity future for AI?
Um, First and foremost, get informed so you know what you're talking about. That's going to be my message. Secondly, to that, communicate, participate, whether it's in forums, social media, YouTube comments on this awesome interview, whatever the case may be. Get your voice out there so that your perspective of origin, right, your demographic, your community, your group of people, whatever it is, so that it's advocated for, so that it has a voice. Give it a voice, right? To quote one of the greatest of all times, be the change you want to see in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to be that change, you need to take action. And in order to take action, that means do with intention. And
Mm-hmm.
so, that's a big key piece. Of course, it's not going to be a ground up only approach. There, of course, in addition to AI alignment, has to be regulatory entity, government entity, corporate entity, alignment across the board, and then geopolitical entity alignment, right? Like that's all a part of and or coming to it. So that's interesting. But for you that are listening right now, that are watching this, that are digesting this information, make a comment, take the time, contribute. We are all co-creators together. So create some of your own voice to be heard, and put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the big data scrapers, right? All the big LLMs will collect and collate your collective voice, and you will be heard in some future state. So
Mm-hmm.
you're planting those seeds today.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that we're barely scratching the surface, honestly speaking. I know that there's been a lot, and I mean a lot. My inbox is inundated with AI stuff. It's driving me absolutely insane with all of the stuff because we have a lot of advocates out there for it, and it's the buzz, it's all the excitement. There's so much going on with it already in a short amount of time, and it's exponentially growing each and every single day. I'm telling you right now, if you if you're watching this, you're listening to this, and you have not embraced AI, you're already behind. You're already behind. But the thing is you can catch up very quickly because we're always evolving, we're always assessing, which leads me into how frequently should we reassess AI's impact on society, and what factors should we actually analyze in order to make sure that we're ethically reviewing, revising, improving AI.
Yeah. So, first thing to touch on there, based on what you're sharing, one of the things that I like to think about it as today is we are just now observing, catching, and touching the very first snowflake dropped to the tip of the proverbial iceberg that is AI, and we can see what's above the water, right? But we have no idea what's beyond. As it comes to like what I would call standardization, standardization communities, standardization initiatives like Oasis type projects. For example, Baseline Protocol is a really good steward of Web3 and blockchain type, guidance and standards. I'm definitely a unified, collective or consensus approach of input. So I like the idea of community standards type communities as opposed to or in addition and alignment to government regulation. I don't think there should be any one element that has the overarching and only full autonomy approach to holding everyone else to account, right? So I think it would be really cool to me to see, a multifaceted approach to the collective definition of what quote unquote right or wrong is, as it relates to the understanding of what this is supposed to be, what it's going to look like, and then how often to revise and reiterate, right? So it's funny, every time I think of another question, I find another answer in how I could automate or create a tool or task leveraged with generative AI to solve for it. It's profound. So keep the questions coming. You can always start with a question by prompt, and just explore what answers you see out there. There's a lot of other cool tools. I'm not solicited or paid to say any of the stuff I've said, for record and reference, but personally, I like to go to Perplexity AI for kind of my new Googling. So it provides me more of a contextual response, to where I can understand it, and then supplemental reference resources. You still have to use it responsibly. Everything is subject to making mistakes today, and so double check, fact check, triple check stuff, but be accountable to yourself, and go from there.
I love it. It reminds me of this because I love playing around with prompts. I'll sit here and I'll create, recreate, figure out how many different ways that I can ask this, this stuff so many different ways. And it reminds me of the classic, with better questions comes better answers. But then again, that's still a matter of perspective of what better actually is. And I truly believe that no matter what you're doing with whatever AI resource that you're using, it's a tool. Keep in mind it's a tool, and how you use it is different than the next person uses it. But with better questions comes better answers. But what are you asking? I truly believe that a lot of people that are out there that really do not understand the full power of what AI can do, they're asking basic questions. So therefore, they're getting basic feedback, basic answers. But it's a language model. It's like you're having a communication with someone, and the better questions you ask, the better feedback you get. But once again, it's a two-way conversation. And I know that I've dove deep into some conversations like, okay, now what? Okay, now let's do this. Okay, great. Now let's do this. In the world of prompt engineering, I truly believe that questions are powerful. But how do you approach prompt engineering, or what's the best way that someone can approach prompt engineering to get the best results that they can get within AI?
So that's a loaded question, Terry, because everything is relative.
I got it.
Um, However, my 2 cents on that, there's a couple things. One, I think that, for me, I've kind of re-experienced life through the eyes of a child, right? What I
I
mean by
love
that is,
that.
yeah.
Patsy
So
Cline. That's a classic Patsy Cline song. I love it. If I could only
is
see,
it okay?
if I could see the world through the eyes of a child, what a wonderful place this could be.
Yeah, yeah. So I do feel that way. I'm enamored with the potentialities and the limitless, seemingly limitless, answers
Mhm.
to questions. And starting with, there's two key principles that I adopt from two great teachers of mine, Simon Sinek and Stephen R. Covey. And Covey says, begin with the end in mind,
Mhm.
and Sinek says, start with why. And so if I start with why I'm looking at this end in mind as kind of a formulaic objective to set as a baseline for my prompting session, I find that establishes a better foundation to guide the line of questioning that I follow up with in prompts. That's kind of a layer one component or foundational component of prompt engineering. Another thing that I've found successful as far as, process goes is I try to, I'll start by asking a question and then realize, usually pretty quickly, that I should have asked another question first. And so I've been doing a lot with what I call pre-prompting, right? And so with pre-prompting, you're saying, help me write a story, for example, right? And it's like it goes about its generic. Now most people know, like, oh, that's AI generated content, writing of a
Mhm.
story, right? It's very loquacious, it's very,
Yeah.
uses a lot of imagery and all that stuff. And then I'm like, well, actually, you're not writing like I would want you to write, so let's create a persona. And
Mhm.
so, then it's, how do we write a writer persona together, right? And then how do we write a writer framework together? And you just basically, create the different facets to do what I call context triangulation. So you can triangulate context. It's not binary, right? Get out of the binary box, go to context triangulation. So you're creating 3 points or more of reference to kind of point and guide and steward the AI's output as that relates to the context triangle, right? Or more. You can use any polygon. You just can't use a line, and if you do, it's wrong. That those are kind of two of my biggest secrets and foundational elements in prompt engineering.
I love that. It took me a minute because I was working with a particular, like I have about 3 or 4 frameworks that I was playing around with. It took me a minute to get the results that I was satisfied with, but I had to keep going back and forth, train it, coach it, give it keywords, act as this, do this, you're this, here's the framework, and keep these in mind. Like as I was communicating back and forth with this, and it was like, okay, I'm getting this. Now I can go do that. Okay, now keep that in mind, but let's go over here. So once again, I think that if you really approach it from a conversation, you'll get better results. Once again, that's how I approach it. I approach it as a conversation, but once again, it's the difference between putting the human side of it, the framework side of it, combining the best of both worlds to get better answers. Once again, with better questions comes better answers. And I truly believe that as you're, at not only questions, but I also believe that the more information that you feed it, we talked about acting as certain things, like, okay, act as this, and your task is to do this. That's still basic prompting, but at the end of that, you have to play around with it, have fun with it. And that leads me down the path of, what are you excited about? What are you most excited about within AI in reference to the future of it? And then what concerns you about the future of AI?
Oh, that's a good question. Literally, my list of excitements are extensive. Personally, in terms of my passions and interest, communication is huge. I've struggled personally with mental health challenges and other things that had made it more challenging for me to communicate with people, connect, or speak to people. And what I found is that through AI, I can refine or distill some of my thoughts. Right, I could put stream of consciousness in, and then work with it to iterate upon it, and the output can be something that's tangible, that's concrete, that I can then convey to someone, right, in a much more interpretable or relatable way. So the elements of translation, and not just translation as translation, but as expressional translation, where my intentions and my bias and my the facets of what it is that I'm communicating from to your end, where what you're receiving as like the potential implications and applications of that type of communication is probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest potential wins for humanity. Right. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. What was the fears of
Yeah.
it?
What concerns you the most about AI?
So as to not plant seeds of ideas for wrongdoers, I'll omit, one or three of the top list, just because I don't necessarily need it to be out there. It's probably already out there. But I will say that, a concern is those that intend or want to do harm now have a lot more access to a shorter path and way to get there, to understand it, to build it, create it, whatever. And so, with all it's kind of like that, perpetual, infinite historical scale of, good and evil, or two contrasting things. Let's not put a label of good or evil on it, but two opposing forces, right? They're always, working to kind of climb the ladder and one up each other over time. That's part of the evolutionary process of existence, in my opinion. So, with all these really awesome, cool, good things, there's probably going to be some relative balance of comparable or opposing force, perceivably bad things. So it makes me sad sometimes to think about it. if I'm honest. But I try to, stay within my circle of control for my circle of concern per Covey again. And that kind of helps me stay focused and not dwell on it too much. But yeah, it's understanding the greater picture and balance of scales. Like with all the good stuff, I inherently know that there's going to be some opposing forces to it, and I don't like to spend a lot of time dwelling on what
Sure.
that manifests like outside of helping to mitigate for it in the contributions to build and design and heuristics and philosophy of AI alignment.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think just in a nutshell, it comes down to social engineering. I think that that's probably the biggest thing to be concerned about is just people that that do not have the current knowledge, skills, the experience with it, the education, the training that are going to be easily manipulated through social engineering. I think that's a really big way, without going into great details of how people are doing that. And I've experienced that. I had a friend of mine that, and I was just sitting here and I was challenging. I was like, that's not this guy. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't say that, this, that, and the other. So I reached out to a few people. I said, hey, be on the lookout. Long story short, about 2 or 3 months later, after the fact that this guy was just oblivious to what was going on behind the scenes, that it wasn't him. And he came back in and gave a whole big apology and this, that, and the other. But at the end of it, his integrity was already challenged. And it was just unfortunately, it happens that way. And I think that social engineering is one of those things that people really need that training. They need those tips, tools, techniques, resources. Don't be afraid of it. You're not going to miss out on anything, but the less that you educate yourself about the technology and what it's capable of, the more aware and the more relevant, the more ready that you can be when you see it. Because you and I both, we've played around with it enough. I can tell when something's been written with AI. I can tell when something's been created with it. I can look at it and say, oh, man, that's AI. And I'm not trying to say that it's not relevant. It's, 100%, it's a tool. It can be used to augment your ideas. And I truly believe that when used properly, you can use the tool with your own knowledge, your own skills, your own experience in order to create an experience for others that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And I think it's the difference between opportunities and possibilities. What are your thoughts when I say the difference between opportunities and possibilities?
So as that relates to AI, opportunities are things that can be held right by individual end users, by other entities. Possibilities are the things beyond all that, right? So that's the creative space, that's the innovation space. To me, I like to hold the opportunity of the others. So of the possibilities, because that's a fun place and playground for my mind to spend time in.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of opportunities, as it relates to the implementation of AI for human enablement and all of that, I mean, they're perceivably limitless. What I mean by that is some of the research that I've done on it is, kind of looking at the future state, in a world where AI and process automation, et cetera, has replaced a lot of, human mundane menial task, just like, the revolution of machinery, right, replaced a lot of manual labor. The mundane things are going to be taken up by or taken away by, depending on how you look at it, or off your cognitive load by, which is how I like to see it, by AI and AI type technologies or AI related technologies. And what that means is as we collectively look into the world of possibilities, we will find and create with human innovation, as we always have, new and exciting ways to apply our time, energy, and effort. And what that means is, yes, some jobs that exist today will not exist in a future state, but that's just history repeating itself as it always has. And we are working towards getting to a place where we're going to have the opportunity to leverage our cognitive load and our cognitive energies towards more creative applications by and large. And we're going to be in a much more, in the moment space versus stuck in the mundane. There will still be mundane things to do forever and always, right? If you want to go, pick potatoes manually, right? Whatever it is, you can choose to do that. We'll probably have to get creative and innovative with ways to encourage ourselves to exercise in a future state as part of our routines, because we won't have to do a bunch of manual things, but we will get to do a bunch of manual things, and it'll be interesting to see how we apply those principles in the future stewardship of our energy and efforts.
I love that. And your company seems to be right on the forefront of developing impactful AI systems that's going to develop the future of AI. So tell us a little bit about your company, and what can you share about the latest projects or anything that you're working on that will shape the future of AI?
Yeah, for sure. So speaking more to CommonThread AI, which is closer to, I guess you could say, market readiness. The exciting thing there is we're able to leverage both predictive AI and generative AI to help organizations better communicate within the organization, right? Like, so from one department to another department, be able to cross contextualize and understand, what the data means, what the information means, with an initial use case of what your customer journey is, mostly in a B2B life cycle, but we're also working in a B2C life cycle as well with some proof of concepts. But basically, what does your customer's process really look like based on the data? Not what is your customer's process based on your go-to-market plan for your sales process, for your marketing process, right? Which is historically how we've done it. We go with an assumption and then we tailor and refine based on feedback. Whereas now with generative AI, things like synthetic data, predictive modeling, you're able to, go take the data that exists as it exists today, put it through the machine, right? And then the output is a tailored, nuanced, weighted, scaled, prioritized, communication and customer experience journey. And then you're able to also share those insights and information translated into the understandings, buzzwords, internal lingo, industry lingo, or role profession lingo cross departmentally. So just the implications of the internal alignment of an organization and customer journey alignment, like all that's a beautiful, beautiful place to be. So that's super exciting. Working with a great team there at CommonThread, and I've been working with them for about a year and a half overall. The other entity I work with or through is LouminAI Labs, and LouminAI Labs is, again, a research and development organization for human enablement through AI alignment. And so, with that, I'm doing more smaller projects currently, doing some independent consulting through that entity on generative AI projects. I'm working on some open source initiatives through the Prompt Engineer Collective, which is a Slack community I'm a part of as well, where some like-minded folks get together. We talk nerdy stuff about prompt engineering and AI, and a really cool growing community founded by Rome, who's a good steward of that. Outside of that, man, I'm out here just trying to learn and absorb like the rest of us, digesting all I can every day within relative reason, and contributing where I can in conversations and information like this here, social media, LinkedIn, etc. Back to the point from earlier, right? Like, we all have a voice. We can all plant the seeds today of what we want tomorrow to be like. And so I encourage everyone, again, please go do the research, become informed. It's okay if you have an opinion. It's okay if it's different. It's okay to bring your bias, because the more we put out there to, kind of forge against each other, the more refined our collective consensus becomes. So let's all spread some word.
I love that. David, thank you so much. Before we go, if you had to summarize AI's biggest benefit potential in one word, what would that one word be and why?
Communication.
Okay.
Absolutely, communication, because the ability to cross and build every bridge of contextual, expressional, literal, linguistical, programmatical, every facet of understanding, right? Those barriers to entry for all of us are gone. So the future state where we are all able to communicate truly comprehensively, holistically, multifacetedly communicate with one another, oh, it's such an awesome future. And it will help us to help ourselves break down the bias, break down the confusion, break down the pain. It's just, there's so much potential in that. So I am 1,000% looking forward to that future state with communication as a key factor.
I love that. David, thank you so much for joining us here today. So before we go, tell us, what is the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, so probably the shortest path to communication is probably LinkedIn. It's the / the David Youngblood. I'm sure Terry will be able to share a link as well. But happy to connect, happy to collaborate, happy to just have a 5-minute virtual coffee to share ideas. I like to identify as a kind of an ideation station or engine. So I'm happy to soundboard for you, listen to you, and maybe help find a better way to do some of these things.
I love that. David, thank you so much for joining us. That was David Youngblood joining us here on the Top Cyber Pro podcast. Look, here's the thing. The future of AI is exciting. Things are evolving every single day. As we discussed within today's conversation, you want to make sure that you educate yourself, communicate with other people, get out there within the communities, consume so that you can create so that you can collaborate so that you can contribute back out there within the world. Because keep in mind, this is a collaborative effort. This is a community effort. This is an effort that is shaping how we interact and engage as humans. Even though AI, a lot of people are scared of it. You know what? It's the future. It's here. And it's going to continue to grow. Embrace it. Learn all that you can. Play with it. Have fun. Do all these different things that you can. And hopefully today's episode with David inspired you to learn just a little bit more about AI. And if you want to get connected with him, we're going to have some links in the description below. Make sure that you follow David, subscribe to the things that he's doing, get connected with them, have a coffee chat. And remember, you can do anything that you want to do. If you put your mind to it, anything is possible the moment you believe you are possible. This is Terry Thompson. I'm the host of Top Cyber Pro. We'll see you in the next episode.